Ladies and gents, and welcome to the Controlled Interest Gamecast, where we talk about video games and everything happening in the industry. As always, I'm joined by Dom.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening.
And Jordan.
Go find yourself a possum titty.
Episode 60. Big round number. 9 more and we'll hit our peak. So, looking forward to that. Bad joke. So as far as what we've been playing this week, another week where, so after last week's episode, I said I was immediately going to get to Prey. Unfortunately, I got swamped with a bunch of freelance work. I'm trying to save up for the Switch and just save money in general. So I've been trying to do as much like freelance graphic design work and stuff like that, video editing. And I got swamped with work, so I wasn't able to really play anything. I think I got like 15 minutes in of Fire Emblem Heroes, and I played a little bit of Magic Origins, which is the card game. Magic the Gathering, obviously everybody knows or should know. It's like one of the biggest trading card games in the world. What they did is they would release a Magic the Gathering game every year on like PlayStation and Xbox and everything, but then they decided to do what everyone thinks sports games should do. So they just released a platform called Magic Duels or Magic Origins. I forgot what the actual name of it is. And then whenever a new set of cards comes out, they just update the game. Which I think is really cool. It's the thing that people talk about sports games doing forever, right? Of releasing a platform and then every year paying, $20 to $25 for a roster update, an engine upgrade, or not engine upgrade, but like, boosting the game somehow, right? So played a little bit of that, but like I said, I really had no time to play anything. I did get 2 books in the mail though that I pre-ordered. Haven't had a chance to read them yet, but I got Star Wars Guardian of the Whills, which is like the backstory of Baze and Chirrut Imwe, which I think I said last week. And then I got, I'm pretty sure you guys are familiar with Neil deGrasse Tyson, right? Pretty sure you guys know who he is. He released a new book called Astrophysics for People in a Hurry. Beautiful cover design. Really cool book. I pre-ordered it like a long time ago. I think like in December. Completely forgot about it. Got it in the mail yesterday. I was like, I'm not expecting anything. Opened it, got the book. Yeah. Beautiful cover. It shows like a kid like looking up at the stars holding a notebook, but it's like all silhouetted, so you don't really know what he's holding or if he's a kid. And then behind him is like a high definition picture of the galaxy, like just super beautiful. I haven't even read the book yet, but A++ on the cover design. I'll give him that. Yeah, unfortunately I didn't really play much. I'm going to be getting to Prey, and we'll talk about that obviously at the end of the show, but I really didn't play much, so hopefully you guys played stuff.
Yeah, I did. So go ahead, Dom.
All right. Salt and Sanctuary.
Yes! Tell us about it.
I finished it, and I actually finished it 1.5 times because I had to get an extra trophy that I had missed the first playthrough, which was an irritation. But, nonetheless, got the platinum as a result of that.
Wow, 2 plats in as many weeks. You're on top of it.
I'm on a roll.
Congrats, Dama.
It's a disease, really. It's getting to the point where I don't know. I played through the game a whole extra half a time just for that purpose. But anyway,
it's like Bloodborne, dude. You're addicted to the hunt.
Yeah, Bloodborne I enjoyed more, so that wasn't. And it had been a long time since I'd played it, so that was less of a chore. Really, I just love that game so much more. So it was.
No, I'm making a reference to the actual world of Bloodborne, like.
Why do they
when
hunt
the hunters the get addicted to the hunt?
No, I got you. But anyway,
God damn it, Dom. God damn it.
Anyway, Salt and Sanctuary is fantastic. I'll throw a couple last thoughts out there since I've been talked about it a couple times, but
yeah,
it is literally Dark Souls 2-dimensional. It is as deep, I would say, like the systems wise. The different classes, the skill trees. They call them creeds, where it is in Dark Souls. They're covenants, basically groups that you have to like give items to. You pledge your allegiance and this and that, and you get different perks based on that. Like in general, like all the different systems and the way the world interconnects with itself is very much Dark Souls, which I guess in that sense Dark Souls is very much Castlevania. But anyway, you could keep going down that rabbit hole for a while.
Is it slow like Dark Souls? Like the combat?
Yeah, it's definitely not as quick as Bloodborne, but it's also, like I said, there's a lot of variability between the classes. So I use primarily a strength and heavy armor class, so it was definitely slow for me. you can do a dexterity class, and you get your little whips and daggers and stuff, and you could probably be zipping around and rolling a lot quicker. But I'd still say it's slower. But again,
there's no dash, I assume.
No, there's just there's a roll, right?
Yeah.
But I'd say in general it's slower. But again, like, this is 2D combat, so, and it does a good job of feeling like, I guess it's like a perfect translation, the combat from 3D Dark Souls to 2D. It just works really well. It's just as deep, like all the different moves and everything. It's kind of tough to explain, I guess, but super cool game. Definitely a tribute to Dark Souls in 2 dimensions. Anyway.
So you'd recommend it on the Switch, I guess, when it comes out.
Yeah, hopefully that does happen, because I think that would get it in front of a whole nother audience too. I think a whole lot of people.
Confirmed, isn't it? Well,
that's what we said a week or two back, that the devs said they were making inquiries about the Switch. So
okay. I'm having a tough time. I apologize for listeners. I'm having a tough time remembering which games are or are not coming to the Switch. I know we talked in our group chat. Hollow Knight is confirmed.
Yeah.
Yeah, that one.
But yeah,
that's another game that will have like really good life on the Switch. Like, it's a great game. I'm playing through it. Like, I love that game. Like, it's one of my favorite games of the year. And I didn't have a chance to play it obviously this week, but like, that game on Switch is going to be so great, man. So great.
Yes.
Yeah, it's the same thing like the Vita is now. Like, I think the Switch is going to become that, where, the Vita was like long dead, really, right? And they still decided to pay up to make a Vita port of Salt and Sanctuary this late in the game, because it was obvious that, well, there's a crowd there and they will buy it. Like, they probably also have PS4s, all those people, but they won't buy it unless this is on the Vita, right? I think the Switch has that same potential, where there's also a big crowd there that would buy this instead of buying on PS4. But anyway,
real quick, just an update. I went to their Twitter. They officially posted they're inquiring for Switch and Xbox One.
Yeah. Yep. Hopefully it comes to both. That'd be pretty cool. So
yeah.
Yes.
Otherwise, played a lot more Mario Kart as usual. I'm not as far as Jordan is unlocking that gold cart, but...
Oh, yeah, I didn't mention that, but got me gold cart.
The game, despite giving you all the characters right off the bat, as you do races, even like multiplayer, exhibition, any kind of race, as you collect the coins, you unlock different cars and wheels and gliders and stuff. So it does give you a sense of progression still, which is pretty cool. So, and there's tons, like there's so many more cars, and they never seem to end. Seem to keep unlocking more and more. It's crazy. So still having tons of fun with Mario Kart.
Who's your main?
And lastly, I rotate between Link, Dry Bones. Sometimes I throw in a Shy Guy. I've been trying to mix it up, really.
My fucking dude Koopa Troop and I got that gold cart.
Whereas Emily switches really between just the Metal Peach and what's the other one?
Rosalina?
The Baby Peach.
Oh, Baby Peach.
No, Toadette, the pink
cool.
little toad.
Yeah.
Toadette.
Yeah, but
not that fucking squid bastard, right?
Oh no, I don't even fuck with those squid people. The squid people, and then there's a bunch of other characters I don't even know who they are, like Morton and...
Oh yeah, it's like Bowser's crew.
Yeah, like Lemmy and Roy.
Yeah,
I'm like
get the fuck out of here.
Yeah, I don't get it.
C
anyway,
tier characters, yeah.
Anyway, I'm trying to push myself to trying different characters, and they really are really different. It's a whole different game when you switch complete weight classes and stuff. It really changes everything, because I started a race as like Bowser. I'm like, holy crap, I can't turn. Like, it just all of a sudden I can't even play the damn game, and Emily almost lapped me and beat me so bad that time. But yeah.
Nice.
It's cool to see how different characters play in that game with different bikes and so on, or carts. And then what else I played was Wolfenstein: The New Order. I think I'm like over halfway through it. Played it a whole lot this week because it's damn good. For the first, 2 hours, I was kind of like, this is really dumb and generic and like a mediocre, stupid last-gen shooter, right?
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, it just kind of, I don't know how to explain it, but it all like starts. So I had heard the beginning was slow, but like, it is slow, but it really gets better really quickly, and then it stays good. at least so far. So I'm loving that too. So
that game, man, I know people talk about it being great, but I still don't think it gets the credit it deserves. Like,
oh yeah,
there's like a lot of B side of the cassette tape shooters that people don't really talk about. Like Doom, Dom and I both played that last year. Fantastic game, dude. One of my favorite shooters in a long time. Wolfenstein New Order, fantastic. And even the Metro games that rarely get talked about are some of my favorite. I love the Metro games. Wolfenstein New Order is great. It's cool to see you playing through it. There's a lot of cool nods too to the old Wolfenstein games, and it's like the way they implement it is like he's having like a weird flashback or like a nightmare. Yeah, it's really cool.
So what happened? And I didn't realize this. I didn't know what I was doing. You get to this. I don't want to spoil too much. I guess it is a pretty old game, but anyway, you get to this base of sorts at one point, and you can kind of walk around freely, and there's no enemies. And I go up to this bed, and it says Nightmare, push X or whatever. Like, what the hell is this? Of course I push X. And then I'm put into what I assumed was, the original Wolfenstein game in whatever bit. It was something and died immediately, and I said, "Okay, that's cool that's there. I'm not going to mess with that anymore."
Well, that's cool that it didn't lock you in there.
Back.
It didn't lock you in there. It was like, "Okay, I saw what it was. That's cool. Not for me." But I'm gonna move on. You know, some of those Easter eggs are like
Crash Bandicoot.
Some of those Easter eggs, it traps you in there, and then you're like, "Oh, I have to finish this," and then get back to the game. So it's good that it lets you get out. So
it reminded me of Crash Bandicoot in Uncharted 4, where it forces you in, but then when you first die or whatever, you can leave, or you can keep playing it.
Yeah, and that's everything you played. That's a good list.
Yeah, that is it.
Jordan, what about your week?
So. So Jared, you were talking last week. You're like, man, I wish I could watch TV like you do. I wish I could sit down and watch stuff. And I was thinking after we got off the podcast, I think you play a lot more games than I do, and so it all balances out. So, and I was listening to Easy Allies talk about this recently, where it's like you can only have so much of your cake. Like, if you want to be up on current movies and TV and games and comics and anime, like you can only have so many of those at once, right? You can't be up on literally everything at all times. So it's all about balance, man. I just wanted to throw that out there because I was thinking about that. But I actually did play more games this week. I've been playing a lot of games this week. So my opening line from the podcast is actually just hilarious bit of background dialogue that I heard in the game Outlast, or Whistleblower. It's DLC, I should say. And so I'm sure a lot of people have heard about Outlast, but basically it's a first-person survival horror game where you're this journalist with a camcorder that has night vision on it, and basically you're just trying to run away from these people and hide from them and shut off this valve or turn this key or whatever you need to do to get to the next area. And very good, very great horror, back to the roots of survival horror, which we need to get back to. And I really think that Outlast is a big part of this horror renaissance that we're getting right now, because I think it was before PT, or I can't remember, was it?
Yeah, it was
before PT.
We looked it up. It was Outlast, then PT, then Resident Evil 7, now Outlast 2. Kind of the lineage.
Right, and like before Evil Within, before a lot of these games that have just come out within the last few years that have brought back horror. So I'd really just like to thank the guys at Red Barrel Games for that. I think that that was something that was sorely lacking in the games industry, and it's starting to hit its full force of the resurgence right now, obviously with like Resident Evil 7, Outlast 2 coming out. So really excited to play Outlast 2. I'll probably be playing that within the next couple weeks. As I mentioned, I played the Whistleblower DLC. Great DLC, connects and fits like a jigsaw puzzle into the story so well, and just makes the already awesome experience even better. So I really don't have much that isn't great to say about Outlast. There's a little bit of questionable level design here and there, or it wasn't the smoothest experience I had. It loads in between areas. It'll just pop up with this random loading screen, and one time it got stuck, or one time this guy I'm running away from, I'm like glitching, and so he just murders the fuck out of me. So there were some issues, but for the most part, I really only have positive things to say about that game. So, loved Outlast, obviously. Also started playing through Life is Strange Season 1, like halfway through Episode 2. And as far as a, story-based kind of interactive experience as opposed to a game almost, it's pretty good. I wouldn't say it's as good as where Telltale is at now with Walking Dead Season 3, but I'd say it's as good as Telltale was at. Like, when this game came out, where Telltale was at then, I think they were on even footing, so we'll have to see with Life is Strange 2. The story is a little slow, like where I'm at in Season 2, Episode 2, it's still not picking up a whole lot. It's still a lot of character building and working on these relationships, which seems to be a big part of this series in general, so I'm not too upset about that. I'd say my biggest complaint is the dialogue. The voice acting is great, but the way the dialogue is written for the teenagers is really just fucking campy, but not in a good self-aware way. It's like an adult trying to be cool and hip and like... I mean, I'm halfway through Episode 2, and Chloe's said the word hella like 7 times at this point, so that's like 3 hours. It's like 3 hours of gameplay, and there's one chick that's like, "Preach it, sister," and like there's just shit where I'm like, really? Did you guys think this was the cool lingo?
Yeah, and that's
that the kids are all...
That's one of the issues with it
on.
being developed by like 30-plus-year-old French dudes for the most part.
Exactly.
And like you said, the voice acting is great. The dialogue is a little rough. It does start off slow, but that game does ramp up. And the one thing I'll say about Life is Strange, I was about to say Last of Us, is that I have a friend, my best friend. He's a car guy. He plays action games. He's a sports guy. He's not really into playing indie games, right? He saw me playing Life is Strange, and he said, "Hey, make sure we hang out whenever you play that." So he actually sat with me and we played through all of Life is Strange, and that game actually got him interested, and he thought the story was super cool and how it like everything that happened and everything. And I thought it was super interesting. Out of all the games I've played, that's the one he was like, "Hey, I want to pay attention to that." So there is something to Life is Strange. I think it's a good game. I don't know if it's like an echelon of greatness, but it's a really solid game. It's a really good starting place for Don't Nod in that hopefully franchise, which as of recording the show today, we heard that they're working on the sequel, or maybe not the sequel, but a Life is Strange game. So that's cool.
Yeah, which I did think it was interesting that they didn't say, "We're working on Life is Strange Season 2, you know?
Yeah.
It was just, "We're working on a Life is Strange game," so that was weird. But, yeah, I think that was the biggest thing for me, Jared, is that I've heard from so many people that this game is great. You've got to play Life is Strange. Oh, you've got to check it out. And, yeah, it's more of a solid to pretty great game as opposed to, like, amazing.
I just think there's not a lot of games like it.
It could turn around.
And I think that's why...
Yeah, it's definitely... I like that it's carving out its own groove, and it's doing its own thing.
Yeah. I didn't mean to cut you off there. Sorry.
No, I was just going to say that one other thing about it, and you were talking, it's 30-year-old French guys making it. It takes place in Oregon, and my God, this game is a little too hip for its own good. Like, it's all this, like, coffee shop indie music, like, really lo-fi acoustic guitar shit, and I get it, Max Caulfield, she's a teenager, but there's some parts where it goes a little overboard in its hipness, and that whole, the hella dialogue, that's just being one example, connects back to that. So that I think is its biggest flaw, is it's too hip for its own good. But other than that, if you can get over the fact that this game is just hipster as fuck, then you can enjoy it, I think. So yeah, enjoying Life is Strange. I'll have more impressions on that. Got back to Prey, and finally got a fucking gun in that game. That's my biggest issue with that game, is the first hour is just like, really? I'm just fucking hitting these mimics with this wrench, and the hit detection is just so obnoxious. Like, you feel like you're hitting the mimic that's right in front of you, and it's just missing, whiffing. And I'm like, isn't this supposed to be a first-person shooter?
Well, where that started was, I think the first... Well, yeah, BioShock, but I think more so was the original Half-Life.
The crowbar.
I'm remembering, you start out with really just a crowbar for a long while. And then when you finally do get your gun, you feel, like, awesome and powerful.
Yeah, but that's like, you don't even get the gun till, like, halfway through the game in Half-Life. And so I think they were more copying BioShock, because BioShock's like more like Prey as far as how long you use the wrench for.
In either case, it's
And-
got to be effective the way they do it, right? Like, it could
Right,
be annoying
and-
if they're not done right.
And it isn't, in my opinion, because when you pick up the gun, for one, I mean, this game is a first-person shooter. That's what it is. You can call it an immersive sim or whatever the fuck, but it's a first-person shooter. Like, the fact that it takes me an hour to pick up a gun is way too long, and the fact that the hit detection is so bad on the wrench when I'm trying to fuck up these mimics, and they're just like destroying me, is annoying, and it's a really bad way to start your game, man. Like, I really didn't like Prey for the first hour, and that sucks because this is a game that I wanted to love. I mean, it's like cyberpunk, sci-fi, like, you guys know, this is a game right up my fucking alley, and obviously I can't shut up about BioShock. So that's my other biggest thing about this game is the hour and a half in that I'm into, it's like they just put a sci-fi skin on BioShock.
I love the first hour
just-
of that game.
I think that it's just too close to BioShock. Like, it's just if they wanted to make a tribute game, that'd be fine, like Salt and Sanctuary or something like that.
I really think
where it's like, clearly we're trying to be BioShock, but I think they're trying to say, oh no, we're carving our own path. We're sci-fi. We're this new type of game, and it's like, it's very, very close to BioShock to the point where it does almost feel like a sci-fi skin, unfortunately.
Well, and
Sorry, Joe,
no,
go
it's
ahead.
fine. I was just gonna say I really liked the first hour, but that's the beauty of video games, is that people have different experiences and opinions.
Right.
And like sticking with BioShock is like, a lot of people seem to dislike the ending of BioShock Infinite or don't really like BioShock Infinite, and I loved BioShock Infinite.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
Because I went in knowing that this wasn't gonna. There's a reason it's not called BioShock 3. You know what I mean?
Right. Right.
So,
And I was the same there, and I think you're pointing to it's all about expectations, which I went into this game thinking it's first-person shooter, more like
yeah.
how BioShock Infinite is more shootery than BioShock itself, and I think this one's more, like I said, it's very BioShock the original as opposed to BioShock Infinite. And so the fact is, like, when you pick up your pistol an hour or so into the game, which I just feel is too long either way, you can't even aim down sights. Like, you can click the right stick and you can zoom in a little bit, but it's barely anything. It's kind of like Halo.
Freestyle.
It's kind of like Halo, and it's just like, it doesn't work. Like, but Fallout 3 is so many other things than a shooter, right, Dom?
Yeah.
This
Broken.
is a first-person shooter. Yeah. Oh yeah. Ouch. But yeah, I just felt like they, if this is a first-person shooter, you should fucking be able to aim down sights, and really aim down sights, not like this bullshit tiny zoom in that they've got going that really, like, it messes up your vision. It puts a vignette on your vision.
It's like, why zoom at all?
Want to use
yeah.
it.
Websites do that
Yeah,
sometimes
exactly.
too with
It's
like pictures.
worthless.
It's like, click to zoom, and you're like, okay, and it zooms like 4 pixels. Like, okay, it's great. I don't know what that's supposed to
Yeah,
mean.
you click to go full screen, but they got a half-page ad on this full screen. Or whatever.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, yeah, that stuff was all. I'm still. I know I'm kind of harping on old Prey and Life is Strange here, but I'm still enjoying those games. Also, I know I'm running a little long here, but I played through both Giant Sparrow games, being The Unfinished Swan and What Remains of Edith Finch. Giant Swan's a great, cute little storybook experience. It'd be awesome to play with kids, or if you got nieces, nephews, little brothers or sisters, something like that, or even, showing, Dom, Emily, somebody like that doesn't play games a whole lot. It's a really cool experience. Edith Finch is what we would, term a walking simulator, where you're basically learning the story of the Finch family and how they seem to be cursed. Everybody dies in weird ways, and they're taking you through each individual story of the family members, and you get to experience the story as that family member, and the gameplay mechanics for each individual story are totally different. So in that aspect, it's very interesting. And the individual stories themselves were very intriguing. I think there's a difference between the word interesting and intriguing, because interesting is something that, like, it gets your interest and then it keeps your interest. Intriguing is like, oh, that's intriguing, but then it may not necessarily continue to interest you all the way through. And that's how I felt about most of these stories. Also, the fact that you really never get any closure about what the curse is that's fucking up this family. And I get that they wanted to leave it ambiguous, but when the whole game is about, wow, this family's super cursed, and look at all the weird ways that they die, and then we're not going to tell you why they die in weird ways. It's like, well, I get that you wanted to leave it ambiguous, but when your whole deal is about that specific point, I don't know why you wouldn't answer that question at the end. So that was my biggest frustration with that game. I think it is a very good game, but I wouldn't say it's great. I think Giant Sparrow's third game is going to be their fucking masterpiece, which I was really, really hoping was going to be the case with the Edith Finch, and I was really hyped on it, but it just didn't quite knock it out of the park for me. So regardless, I think it's a really cool experience, definitely worth playing, and I'm obviously very excited to see what happens next for Giant Sparrow. So
let's
I'll leave it there. I've got plenty of other shit I could talk about, but
you're the media guru so much every week. So the first bit of news here was an interesting bit that came out of nowhere. Scalebound Trademark renewed by Microsoft, and then the following is sparks rumors of a remake, which is an odd way to phrase it. I understand what they mean by that, but for me, a remake is a game that is a remake of a game that already released. You know what I mean? I think it's odd calling a game that never released a remake. So I want to get into this real quick. We don't have the long discussion on this. Obviously, there's multiple reasons why Microsoft would have renewed the trademark. They own the IP, right? They don't want anybody else getting hold of the Scalebound trademark and using it. Some people are saying this might be just a move so nobody else does anything with it ever, which would be fine, and that's a plausible argument and stuff like that. But we're talking about a company that's struggling for exclusives. We're talking about a company that's struggling for new IP for the Xbox. Why on earth would they just renew the trademark for Scalebound if they're not working on anything?
Well, and why would they just cancel Scalebound unless it was just totally butt-fucked, you know?
Exactly. And the rumors with Scalebound...
Because it's a new IP, it's something that gets people excited, and clearly they need that right
And it's
now.
very Japanese focused. Like, it has a very Japanese aesthetic, and that's something that's kind of missing from the Xbox catalog. The biggest news that came out of it, and this isn't really a rumor now, this is kind of corroborated by a couple of sources, is that the reason the partnership with Platinum didn't work out is because they weren't meeting deadlines. And from Platinum's perspective, obviously they were saying that their creative vision was being stifled, which is, I think, their way of phrasing we aren't good at managing all of the games we're working on, and we couldn't meet Microsoft's deadlines. Exactly. You know,
maybe if you had enough creative energy to put into one fucking AAA game as opposed to making like 3 AA games at a time and a couple of indies, like
also
focus your shit.
Don't agree to deadlines that you might not be able to
also
make.
They're probably used to working with Sony, and no offense to Sony makes great games, but Sony's a little bit more lenient on that stuff, it seems like, for the most part. Their track record shows, you know. So, and Microsoft's probably like, hey dude, we need this game, we need exclusives, you know. And they're like, the whole thing of missing deadlines isn't surprising. The thing with Platinum is people talk about them like they're some revered studio. I think they're a good studio that sometimes has hits and sometimes has misses, you know. And they're somewhere in between there. The people are like, this game, Scalebound, if it comes out, it's not going to have the greatness of Platinum. I'm like, well, it possibly could have had the greatness of Platinum. I don't know if that was a for sure thing or not, you know?
Unfortunately, I feel like people give them way more credit than a lot of other studios that deserve that credit, that actually have the fucking track record. Like, somebody like, just pulling it out of my butt, Remedy. Like, Remedy Entertainment just, you know, people could give a fuck about Quantum Break, right? But it's like, that's a really great game. Alan Wake is really well received critically, and the Max Payne games were really well received. Like, nobody gives a fuck about Remedy, but Platinum is this, you know, paragon of the industry.
Exactly. It's weird. Dom, you haven't really gotten into this discussion. What do you think? Is this Scalebound trademark renewal, like, is it something we should pay attention to, or is it just them protecting their own IP?
I think it could come back. I think it might be a while, though. They definitely want to hang on to it, though, like you're saying. And right now, that their intention might just be just to keep it off the market, and so they have it. You know, with the intention of one day doing something with it, or maybe they can decide later, right? They're just owning things to own them, right? It could be valuable.
If nothing else, it's a solid name.
Yeah.
Right.
I honestly think, though, really, like, we were talking about this in our own private chat, is like, It depends on how much of the game they actually owned, like assets and stuff like that. Like they could, and it's not this easy. I know it's a lot more complicated than this, but they probably could have taken a lot of those assets and stuff, like probably the game that was already made, taken that and then given it to another company. And obviously they're not just going to be able to, fill in the holes and let's release it. They're going to have to do some tweaking and stuff like that. But it could be farther along than we anticipate. You never know.
And then there's like, well, what engine was it built on? And who owned that engine? Yeah. It might not
I feel like it's got to be
transferable.
I definitely feel like Microsoft owns that shit, though. I don't think that they would have just let all that stuff go, and I don't think that they are the type of company to let people own their IPs, I think Epic.
It all depends
Epic
on
would
how
own
that
Gears of War, if that were the case.
It all depends on how that contract was worked out initially, right?
Exactly. Also, the Twitter user who broke this news is also claiming that it's they've already given it to what do you say? A really close Microsoft studio, like a really trusted studio that's close to Microsoft. So a first party or a really close second party. Unfortunately, that's not Remedy or anything because obviously Remedy's not tied to Microsoft anymore.
One of the Forza ones.
Oh, well, yeah, because the one of the Forza studios, they're actually splitting off into two studios now, and one's going to be working on the Horizon games, and another one's working on non-racing games. So that could potentially be it.
I'm just saying, there's a Forza game every year. It feels like Call of Duty.
Well, they're different though. For racing fans, they are very different. Forza, the mainline Forzas are more like F1 racing type games.
It's sim versus arcade.
Exactly. Whereas Forza Horizon's more of like the playful, go around a city and do exactly the arcade type of racing. Okay. So they're completely different.
I buy it. That's just the ignorant outsider's point of view for you. Then.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say even just being the not really Xbox guy, even though I have one, I think they're different enough to where you could speak to this better than I could, Jared, but I don't hear any Xbox fans like, we just got Forza Horizon 3, now we're getting Forza 7 or 6 or whatever.
Yeah, because they take up different parts of the chart. Like, for instance, my friend that I talked about previously in the show, he loves arcade racers. He's not about that F1, Forza Motorsport or Gran Turismo, like those more authentic racers. He's more of like the arcade, the Need for Speed, the Forza Horizon. And there's some people that crossed up.
Shout out to Burnout. You got to shout out to Burnout when you talk about arcade racers.
Burnout as well.
Yes, Burnout.
There's some people who cross over, but they are two big markets. And yeah, it's not like people complaining like, oh, we got this last year. Completely different games. Speaking about potentially different games, we got news today, as of recording this show, about Destiny 2 gameplay details. Pretty interesting stuff. All of us played Destiny. I think we all had the same experience with it. We played it. We gave it the opportunity. We enjoyed it. And then I think all three of us hard quit, right? It got really repetitive. There wasn't a lot there. It was a lot of the same old. There wasn't a lot of meat on the bones of what Destiny was. Destiny 2 came out. There was a lot of announcements. I'll try to get through them as quick as possible, and then we'll talk about the more relevant stuff. So they changed all of the multiplayer game modes to 4v4, which is huge. They also implemented matchmaking. So if you're one person playing through the entire game single player, which they kind of touted as a thing you can do now, you can play through the entire story by yourself. But if you want to get into raids and stuff, they actually added in-game matchmaking services, which, hello, it's 2017. Thankfully, you added that to your game. The other thing they added is clans. Those were a part of Destiny, but they were outside of Destiny. They were in the Bungie client through web services, and you had to sign up and make your clan that way. They implemented them into the game.
God, so much shit was just not in the fucking
It's almost
game.
as if this game was rushed to market. Anyway.
No, I don't think it was rushed. I think they just stripped it clean about a year before they released it.
Well, no, they had I don't think stripped it clear. They had to start over again. From the reports we got, they had a certain game in mind, and then they kind of wiped the slate clean and started a new game. Obviously with the same assets and stuff, but I think the way the progression and stuff was handled. Anyways,
it changed very much. Yeah.
They showed off the gameplay. It looks like it's going to be the opening mission. It's the same thing they showed when they initially revealed Destiny, where you saw your guy getting out of that junkyard with the ghost talking to you, and it was kind of that opening mission. And then when you played Destiny, you realized that was the opening mission of the game. Kind of the same thing. I don't want to get into too much of the nitty gritty of Destiny, but the tower that's kind of iconic part of Destiny gets attacked by the Cabal. You're introduced to the new big bad, which his joke name is Gary, but his real name is Gaul. They talked about how he's an interesting villain, that he's not just your cookie cutter villain. They actually compared him to the main villain in Die Hard, Alan Rickman's character. So he's kind of more of a nuanced evil, not so much a bad guy, I want to destroy the world kind of thing. As far as gameplay goes, it pretty much looks the same. My personal take, so going into this, I was 30-70 not going to buy Destiny 2. Going into this, I'm 50-50. It didn't really jump the bar a whole lot. A lot of people said this best. You'll see a lot of the takes that are the same. This seems like a quality of life update for Destiny. Obviously, there's a lot more cutscenes and stuff, and it does give you value for buying Destiny 2. It is going to be a different experience. But the visuals aren't very much improved. The gameplay isn't very much improved outside of a couple of new supers. A lot of the stuff they added are quality of life stuff. Like you can go to a different planet inside when you're already on a planet. You don't need to go to orbit anymore, which was, I think, a way to hide loading screens, to be honest with you. Obviously, you still did load, but it was like, hey, jump here so we can unload that, and then we can load something else. Whereas now they made it so you can jump from planet to planet. One of the really interesting things, so in the first game, it was terrible character development. It was a terrible story. There was really nothing there, right? Now, as you saw with the teaser, they're really implementing, we have characters in this world. You have Nathan Fillion's character, Cade Six. You have the Titan guy, who I always forget his name, Zavala. I think his name is, probably got that wrong. And then you have the Warlock character. And what happens, and these are kind of details that were talked about during the reveal, but you got more of it afterwards. When the tower goes down, right, and everything's destroyed, all the people, Guardians, lose their light. So they're not as powerful as they are. And obviously somehow you get your light back, or what would be the point? But anyways, all of them have a different thing that happens to them. So the Titan guy, he's very stoic, very noble. He's voiced by the guy that's in House of Cards and a bunch of other shows. Luke Riddick. His first name might not be Luke. Something Riddick. Anyways, his character ends up going to one of the moons of Venus, I believe. And he the way he handles losing the light is he questions his entire...
Lance Reddick,
there you go. He questions his entire existence. He's like, well, if this can be stripped away, what's the point of me even being here? And he has an existential crisis. So that's the way his character handles it. Cade Six, the comic relief character, he's full of pride and full of confidence, right? And he's kind of an idiot. He kind of goes on his own mission, and he's on a different planet. I don't remember the exact name. Nessus, I think. He's basically a one-man hero journey, and it's kind of your job to make sure he doesn't kill himself, right? Which is a really cool take on his character. The third character, the Warlocks, they have the closest tie to the Traveler, which is the big circle you see in all of the Destiny promotional material. It's the big thing that gives the Guardians their power. It's that big thing that's like on Earth. They're the closest to it. It's kind of like their religion. It's basically the easiest way to put it. And the Warlock character takes the loss of the Traveler's power to heart, and it's a very religious and faith-based journey, and she disappears, the first one to disappear entirely. You don't see her. So when you go to her planet, it seems like the whole thing you're going with her is like renewing her faith in it, making sure that she still has faith in the Traveler's ways and stuff like that. So it's really cool how each of these characters is going to be handled. And like I said, when that teaser came out, that teaser had more character development narrative than the first game. And that's what's exciting about this game is it seems like they are building a world where these characters are interesting. In this gameplay reveal today, I'm more intrigued by any of the Destiny characters than I was in the first game. I talked a lot. I want to hear your guys' opinions. I don't know if either of you watched the gameplay reveal, but I know you guys are familiar with the first Destiny. So hearing this stuff, how does it make you feel about the possibilities of you buying Destiny 2, or what you think the future of the franchise is?
So for me, played the campaign of the first one, what was there, a couple multiplayer matches, and I was kind of out after that. I get the appeal, the looting, the loot grinding, and then the multiplayer stuff, like you're gonna get with your squad or whatever the hell they call it, raid team.
And it's a solid shooter, that's worth noting.
Yeah. Oh, the shooting mechanics are like absolutely top notch, probably best out of any FPS there is, at least recently.
I don't know if I'd go that far.
Well, maybe a little hyperbolic, but it's really good in that regard. But after multiplayer stuff, especially team-based multiplayer stuff, a raid that's going to take hours that you're going to do, that would be amazing.
See, they just need to go fucking full MMO with this bitch, man. Yeah,
it's just not for me. It's very much not for me, because that's just never going to work. I'm never going to get the full experience that people, a group of friends who can actually play this game together and have a whole shit ton of fun doing a raid, like one whole
your fire team, that's
what it is, which sounds cool as shit too. And then the whole loot grinding thing is a little too much for me too. Like, I liked, you're always getting new guns, even though a lot of time they've kind of felt the same. And it is a little bit satisfactory, but like after a while, I was just kind of like, it got too hard to get new stuff, and it was like, it was just a chore, like too much of a chore.
Which is interesting because I think they did it way better than Borderlands did. That's one of my biggest gripes with Borderlands is you get guns so often in the game that they don't feel like they really matter. I liked that it was kind of like you got guns ever so often in Destiny, but there came a point where like you had to work a little bit to get the really good guns, right? Another thing that they added that I didn't mention is they added a map, and they added did you guys ever do any overworld stuff in Destiny where you just like ran around the moon or ran around Venus or wherever it was? Like, those open areas before you went to story missions?
Right.
They added a new thing in there, Jordan, where there's characters in those areas too. So it's not just an open area with just enemies that you shoot and stuff, right? There's actually characters you talk to and stuff, and you can get missions from them. And I forgot the exact words, but there's these specific missions where they lead you down these like corridors and passageways to like bosses and mini bosses that aren't necessarily story related, but you get items from them too, and they're kind of their own missions on their own if you want to go out and get them. They also cool. Like I said, they also made a huge emphasis, Dom, that you can play through the entire single player by yourself. So this may not be a game you get at launch, but if you can get it on sale or something, the campaign, they've showed cutscenes. It looks like it's improved. Obviously, if you have your doubts, wait. But it does seem like a game, even if you're not going to get into the heavy raid stuff, which I enjoyed. I had a group of 6 that I raided with, and it was fun until it wasn't, and I hard quit Destiny because there just wasn't a lot of content there.
Until it wasn't.
My other issue with this announcement, and I understand why, but for me, if you're showing off gameplay, you shouldn't have any ties to anything if it's this event for everyone. Towards the end of the show, they're like, we would like to thank our partners PlayStation for providing all of the PS4 Pros that are going to be used to play on today. And I was like, that's a weird thing to say during a gameplay reveal. Really odd to me. Also, it's coming to PC, which is huge. Apparently, it's silky smooth, runs 60 FPS. A lot of the people I follow that are more PC-centric, the Jesse Coxes and Ammunitions of the world, if you follow them on Twitch or YouTube, they were talking, and I value their opinion, they're not just like PC tryhards. They were saying that, like, as far as in comparison to a lot of other games, the PC performance in relation to the console performance is like super drastic. Even though Destiny 2 is running on a PS4 Pro, the PC still just, it looked night and day apparently from what they were saying, which is kind of odd because you'd figure the PS4 Pro would make up a little ground. Obviously, nothing's going to look as good as a PC, right? But from what they say, they've played other games that are both on console and PC, and they never really make those kind of same statements, and it was weird for them to throw that out there.
Yeah.
Probably because Destiny 2 is it's a huge game. It's going to be one of the biggest releases of the year, and they'd expect it to be a little bit more polished or maybe have some better enhancements for the PS4 Pro. So it was just a weird message there. Also, the other biggest news here, not coming out on Steam, it's coming out on Battle.net, which is now called the Blizzard app, which is not surprising. Blizzard's owned by Activision, so why wouldn't they?
But that's DRM free, right?
I think so, yes. And the other thing is it helps them control cheating and other systems like that. People are like, why isn't it on Steam? It's like, my use of Battle.net, I like it a lot more than Steam. I don't dislike Steam, but if I was like to pick which one I favored more, I definitely like Battle.net more. And it makes sense. Activision owns Blizzard, so why wouldn't they put this game that they're publishing on that platform, right? Duh.
Yeah. Then you get free ads for their other stuff too, right?
It only makes sense.
I'm pretty sure with Battle.net, like I mentioned, it's DRM free. You also don't have to launch Battle.net like you do Steam while the game's playing.
Exactly. And I think the big thing too that you said, Dom, is like the advertising for other games. Like Overwatch is a nice companion to Destiny. Of like, Overwatch is a multiplayer game, yes, but it's a game that you can play on and you can just jump in and jump out. So like if somebody's waiting for somebody to get onto Destiny and they want to do their group raids or stuff like that, it's like, I can just hop on Overwatch and play some Overwatch. And then they're Overwatch like,
or whatever it is,
Diablo,
they can put up
whatever.
a Hearthstone app. Yeah. Instead of paying for that to be on Steam or anywhere else.
Yeah.
Real quick, I just want to go back to where you were talking about the PC version, Jared. And I think this could be a really good thing for Destiny just in general.
Oh, yeah.
Just the fact that, we've had so many terrible PC ports recently. Prey being the most recent, but all the way back to Arkham Knight, how bad that was. And it just seems like the PC versions recently have been the worst of the three when it comes to PS4, Xbox, and PC, and that just sucks because it should be the opposite, really. I mean, I know I'm a console gamer, but PC should clearly be getting the best performance in video games, no doubt about it. And so, if that's the case with Destiny, I'm really glad to hear that, because we've just had way too many examples of fucking broken PC versions of the games that should be running best on PC.
Also, it has an uncapped frame rate on PC. The ones that were playing at the event were 60 FPS, but it actually has an uncapped frame rate, which is huge for people.
It's great.
Yeah. I think that's it for the Destiny news. We were going to cover the Ubisoft news, but it's not anything too crazy. They announced 4 games coming out in the next fiscal year: Far Cry 5, The Crew 2, which is odd, Assassin's Creed, and South Park Fractured But Whole. Speaking of Far Cry 5, though, we've had all these rumors of it being on Montana and being a spaghetti western. You wanted to talk about that, Dom, so what did you want to get into?
So we've talked before about our favorite game genres or gameplay styles, first person, third person, action, or what have you, but I don't think we've ever talked about, what our preferred settings are. So, yeah, it was Far Cry 5 being rumored as a western. I don't think that's going to end up being the case, but it seems like it's just Montana, and it was mistaken for Red Dead. But anyway, Red Dead being the western, and then we just had Mass Effect being all sci-fi. Some other news about The Witcher that we'll get to shortly, of course, being like a high fantasy type setting. So it just got me thinking about, what are some of my preferred genres when it comes to games? And ultimately I came down to myself, I'm pretty agnostic, I think. I think I go through phases, really, where, there's parts of the year, or maybe a whole year at a time even, there's no rhyme or reason to it, where I'm really feeling something high fantasy. Like when I was into The Witcher, it was like that was it, right? Like I was anything in that
or even Dragon's Dogma
was just like,
you were playing that too, weren't you, for a bit?
Yeah, so I mean I guess I could kind of go on like binges of that sort into certain settings. And then I really do love sci-fi too, right? Like I loved Halo, Mass Effect, and so on. The only genre I think overall I'm pretty agnostic. Like I like everything. It just comes and goes in phases. But the only genre, or rather the only setting, I think I generally veer away from is modern day stuff. It's part of the reason I never got into GTA so much. It just didn't click with me as much. I think I liked the more unrealistic settings, frankly.
Yeah.
Right? And I have other issues with GTA, but I think that's the core thing of why I never got super into it. I was like, I don't want to play a game in a city that is real. Granted, I hope no one out there is actually going and stealing cars and killing hookers, but you could, I guess.
Spoilers, Dom. That happens every day.
You see where I'm going now. Where on that same sense, there's literally no way I could actually do 99% of the things Geralt of Riviera, whatever it is.
Rivia.
Yeah, obviously magic in that sense isn't real, or in any sense. I don't know. Let's not get into that, but you see my point. I think I prefer settings that are...
It's real to me, damn it!
Settings that are more, that are just frankly not real, right? Fantastical in whatever sense. So I think that's where I come down. And now I want to get back into Persona 4, which is a whole different thing. But more on that on a later date, I guess. So I guess I'm just curious to hear what you guys think. Like what kind of settings you prefer, or what you try to stay away from too. So
I hate Cyberpunk. No, I love Cyberpunk. I just, you want to go first, Jordan, or you want me to shoot?
Well, you've already wounded me, so I'm just gonna lie here and bleed out right now. You go ahead.
I'm just kidding. I love Cyberpunk. Cyberpunk's really cool. Yeah. But I'm kind of like you. I'm agnostic. One thing as you were talking, I realized something. I love fantasy, Lord of the Rings, totally my jam. Love Lord of the Rings. Love high fantasy. I think I just said sci-fi. Love sci-fi. The Star Wars, all that stuff. Don't want to explain what sci-fi is. They're probably my two favorite settings. But as far as you were saying, you don't really like real life as a setting too much, or like modern day. And what I realize is that I have more of a leniency for high fantasy and sci-fi. Like I'll play a mediocre sci-fi or high fantasy game and deal with it just because I like those type of worlds. Whereas if I'm playing a modern or current day kind of game, more based in current day, I have a lower threshold for what I'll continue playing. So like Life is Strange is really good. And I don't have a counter example to it, but like if Life is Strange was something it was okay and I didn't really like it, I wouldn't have finished that game. Whereas like from all intents and purposes, Dragon's Dogma, though I haven't played it, seems like a solid game, not necessarily a great game, but a solid game. If I felt that game wasn't great, I would have still managed to slog through the rest of it just because I love high fantasy. So I think it's, for me, I have a lower threshold for finishing a game if it's modern day and it's not up to snuff. Whereas if I'm playing through a sci-fi or a high fantasy world, I think that I'm more okay with not so great games. Also, I think that modern day games have to nail character way harder. They rely on them nailing character because they can't. What's world building gonna do? You know what I mean? It's a current day.
Yeah.
Like they're not gonna do any world building I'm not used to. Whereas fantasy and sci-fi have that advantage of they're putting us in a world that's unworldly. It's unrealistic. So they have the advantage of building a world we're not used to and telling us what this world is. Whereas if it's based in modern day, yeah, there's a little bit of slight differences, but for the most part, you're not going to get much out of world building. So you have to nail your characters. You know, you absolutely have to.
So
Totally agree, Jared.
you just reminded me, and I don't know how I omitted this. Post-apocalyptic is absolutely far and above my favorite setting. Now that I think about it, I don't know how that skipped my mind.
A lot of people are burnt out on that right now.
And I love it. We're getting a ton of it, but I've been on a binge the last couple of years.
I think we're on the ending edge of this post-apocalyptic thing, and I think we're moving further into. There's going to be a lot of sci-fi, a lot of cyberpunk stuff.
I was going to say, along those lines, we're moving to more like dystopian kind of thing.
Yeah.
You could be a little post-apocalyptic edge, but more like just weird, just changed future shit, I guess.
Right,
exactly.
yeah.
Before Jordan goes in, just my closing statement on this, we said this before the show, is for me, I'm open to hearing, like when I see a reveal for a game or a trailer or anything, immediately if I see a setting, it doesn't turn me off. Like I'm not going to see a high fantasy setting and be like, okay, that game's immediately not for me. I give every game a chance, and then based on when more information comes out, I'll make my decision based on gameplay and narrative and all these other things. The setting is never a decider for me because I think you're limiting your own interests. Like if you're going to knock a game solely on its setting, you're kind of screwing yourself out, right? Like I don't know. It's a weird thing for me when people are automatic like, oh, that's a high fantasy game. I'm not playing that. You know?
Yeah. Oh no, I think you're right. I think you're right that it's less important than the actual game itself. But you just made me think of another setting that I love, and there's not enough of it. Is historical stuff. So I've been playing Wolfenstein, right? So that's both
alt history.
What I was just saying. It's history, and then it's alternate history. So it's still 1960, which is history, but it's a different 1960.
Just like just like Fallout 4 too, to some extent, post-apocalyptic and alt history kind of stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
But then regular history, like Assassin's Creed stuff, I've found to be awesome too. So
exactly.
Had to get that in there.
That's it for me. You can go ahead, Jordan. That's all I have to say about settings.
So yeah, I just wanted to real quick agree with the last thing that you said, Jared, that I try to be really just with life in general, but especially with media, I just try to be as open-minded as possible. And so when it comes to video games, you're going to have to do a lot to get me to completely turn away and not even give your game a chance, right? And setting is just not one of those things. Now, there's certain settings that I'm absolutely more particular to than others, and I'm going to, if there's a game that's in a setting that I'm not really partial to, and then it also has other stuff that I'm not partial to, then yeah, I'm probably not going to go with your game. But that's nothing personal against developers or anything like that. So as far as my favorite settings, obviously, I think I've talked plenty about, Jared, you brought up cyberpunk, so I'm huge into science fiction, and obviously cyberpunk being a huge subgenre of that, and connects back to the changed future that Dom's talking to. The dystopian stuff is a big part of
cool as shit
of cyberpunk, yeah, and it is cool as shit. And then of course I'm very into fantasy, but I like those really character driven modern day things like you were talking about, Jared, just as much because especially in video games, like you said, there's just not as much in our own real world. There's not as much crazy shit going on, so we don't get that focus as much. And usually if we do, it's, like a story-based, maybe walking simulator or A Life is Strange, something like that, with a little bit of magical realism tossed in there. But yeah, for me, I think setting if I introducing me to a whole new world is usually going to hook me because another point I'd like to make is the fact that a lot of people just are hooked on the fact that video games are escapism, and I, to be honest, completely disagree with that. I think that if that's all video games are, then that's all movies are. That's all TV is. That's all any type of entertainment is. And so I just disagree with that. I think what a big part of the reason we play video games is because of what you said. I think it was you, Dom. None of us could be Geralt of Rivia. None of us have superpowers like Cole and Infamous, and none of us are going to be able to travel to the Andromeda Galaxy like in Mass Effect. So the reason that I play a lot of these, yet, but none of us are ever going to be a fucking Asari, let's say that much, right? Exactly. So unfortunately indeed, because would just be, then this whole transgender thing would be solved real quick. We're just fluid, motherfucker. But anyways, the reason that I play a lot of those different types of settings and the reason that I'm into these video games like that is not because of escapism. It's because I don't know how to fucking fly. I don't have superpowers. I don't have magical abilities like a Witcher does. And so I'm playing these games to experience things that aren't possible for me. And that's the whole crux of VR. VR is not all about escapism. VR is all about doing things that you are unable to do, Eagle flight's a perfect example of that. We're never going to be an eagle, but we can enjoy the experience nonetheless.
I'm an eagle. And fuck you.
So anyways, I just wanted to, I think that's a important point in the conversation for me personally, is that
I get you.
The setting is more important because it's not all about the escapism. It's about what world you're bringing me to that I've never been able to visit before. And, like I said, books are the same way, movies, TV shows, whatever. So
you brought up The Witcher. We couldn't have had more Jordan news. Christmas came early news this week of the Witcher Netflix show being announced. Go ahead. The floor is yours, Jordan. You can go ahead and talk about this.
Yeah. So I don't actually want to make this conversation all about The Witcher. Surprisingly enough, I will say this. I think that obviously it's well known on the show that I am a huge fan of The Witcher. Absolutely one of my favorite games of all time, and now it's getting a Netflix television show, totally, hopefully it'll be, R-rated, and it'll have the special effects that it deserves. I think Netflix or HBO are the two perfect places for this, and obviously with HBO coming off of Game of Thrones, probably wouldn't be the best idea to hop it right into The Witcher. So I think this is literally my fucking dream happening right now as far as an adaptation for The Witcher, because I did not want a movie series, guys. I really didn't, because all that's gonna be is, all right, we're fucking adapting The Last Witch, a collection of short stories that are loosely connected to each other throughout Geralt of Rivia's early days as a Witcher, and then we're gonna have these this mainstream audience get really deep into this like super dark fantasy world that's actually just reflecting our world with fantasy characters and elements in it. And then it's just gonna be like Ghost in the Shell or any of these other franchises that start to get off the ground, but they're not mainstream enough, and then they can't get the second movie made, and then it's just a fucking shit show. And so I think this is the perfect situation, especially since you're going to be able to just hop into the episodes whenever you want and watch them at your own pace. And I think this will be great for whichever way they try to adapt, whether it's book by book or story by story, chapter by chapter, I don't know, but I just think that this is the perfect situation for The Witcher to be adapted, besides the adaptation that's already been the video games. So I just wanted to say that as far as this is like perfect.
I have a couple questions for you real quick before we get into
sure
with this. First, do we know if this is going to be animated or live action?
No.
So that's a big question. The production company itself is a CG animation company, which means that they probably do 3D CG, like something like Kingsglaive, Final Fantasy, but they probably also just do a lot of 3D effects for movies, and particle effects, stuff like that. So what I'm thinking is either it's going to be live action and they're just going to be really fucking good at the special effects and all the different supernatural elements that you'll see on screen because that's their forte, or it's just going to be a 3D CG series, kind of like Final Fantasy Kingsglaive, and I'm totally fucking down with that because that's basically a Netflix series, Witcher Blur special is what it is. Is like if you just imagine the Blur making a Netflix series for The Witcher, that's what that is, and so I'm totally down with that either way. But we do not have any confirmation to answer your
that trailer. Sorry, that trailer for Witcher 3, the CG one, that would be cool. Just that style. Right. Oh man.
Yeah. Yeah, the one, if you guys, I don't know if this is one you're talking about because there are several of those, Jared, but if you guys want to look up Killing Monsters, the Witcher 3 trailer is, and I'm almost positive that was done by Blur itself, so fucking dope shit. And yeah, if that was how they did it, I could already just see that being an amazing TV series. So
that's going to be a tough question for them to answer, I think, because especially coming off of The Walking Dead, and even in Game of Thrones, I could see the strings behind some of their CG, right? Like with the dragons.
Right. Oh my gosh, when fucking Daenerys hops on her dragon, it looks awful. Right. Every time.
But why that's disheartening is because those two shows are going to have a way bigger budget than this Witcher Netflix series, right?
Right.
So that's why I think they really got to be careful. I think I'm with you, and I'd prefer if they just went full animated.
Oh, 100%. With a lot of the stuff in Witcher, like, I think that CG will go through it's either going to look, they're going to have to spend their money somewhere, so it's going to be like either the CG is going to look dope, but they're going to lose money elsewhere. And I would rather have it be the motion graphics or animated type thing, because you get the most out of the creatures, you get the most out of the characters, you get the most out of the settings. When it comes to live action, you're going to be, if you put money into one thing, you're going to lose money in another. So do you want the monsters to look badass, but you can't go to that many settings? Or it's a tricky road.
Or you get shit actors.
Yeah, exactly. You're going to lose money somewhere.
Yeah, if it is, Kingsglaive style CG, then I am totally fine with that because they just don't have any bounds at that point. They can do everything that they would want to do to adapt the book. However, on the flip side, I would love to see a proper live action adaptation of The Witcher because the Polish stuff, from all accounts, is not very good. So,
also,
either way, I think it could work, and I do think that the Witcher series and the world of the Witchers is very magical, but it's not so soaked in magic that it's around every single fucking corner, and that I don't think it would be impossible for them to do, I guess is what I'm saying. And also, I just think that, like, there's lower budget shows. Outcast on Cinemax, for example, has way better effects than Game of Thrones on HBO.
Okay.
And
so it can be done.
It absolutely can be done on a way smaller budget, I think. I think there's plenty of indie films out there that have way better CG than Game of Thrones and have way smaller budgets.
Also, with the budget thing, think about this. The reason those dragons probably don't look up to snuff isn't that the Game of Thrones doesn't have a budget. It's that look what that budget goes to. A lot of those actors get paid a lot of money. And
that's a good point.
Because they're
far in.
Exactly. And if you think about it, that's why the last two seasons they've talked about is they shorten the seasons so they can up the budget per episode so it can be as badass as we want it to be. So I think that it's Game of Thrones, their CG stuff, and Walking Dead, it isn't bad because they would want it to be, obviously. It's just you have a budget, you pick what you want to spend your money on, and obviously the actors are very important. So, like, yeah, our CG isn't going to look fantastic, but it'll look passable. People will deal with it, It's, so.
Yeah.
Also,
I remember them saying the reason we didn't have whose direwolf was it? Was it Jon Snow's direwolf? The reason we didn't have him at the Battle of the Bastards was because we wanted to, put more of our budget into the battle itself or whatever. I'm like, what the fuck? HBO can't pay for you to have the fucking direwolves on the show?
Also, shout out to the author of The Witcher for still being salty as hell towards the video games.
Oh, yeah. So real quick, we'll go over that. So he's basically, what has happened here is he made a one-time deal with CD Projekt to give them rights to The Witcher, right? And essentially what happened is he doesn't get residuals, even though The Witcher has become a huge
His fault.
video game series, and it's totally his fault. You've made a bad fucking deal, man. Whoever was your manager
or your
agent
lawyer
at that point,
yep.
should just be taken out back
and
dealt with.
The weirdest thing about that to me is, you could say that like, oh, if only I had invested in Apple 30 years ago or what, right? But this was his baby, his product. You'd think he'd have pride and want to invest in it and want to be.
It's because he didn't understand video games, and he's like, it's whatever. It's not going to do anything.
Exactly. And so now CD Projekt has made The Witcher a Polish national treasure, essentially. Like
it is.
What else comes from Poland?
Yeah, it literally is. Like they've done stuff with the government and stuff to where it's like, officially recognized as being a treasure of Poland for real. And so
That's
he's
awesome.
he's definitely butthurt because the Witcher series has never been more popular than when it was turned into these video games, especially with Witcher 3. And his books are still being translated to English. We don't get the last one until next year, 2018, years and years after it was released in Poland. And he doesn't realize that not only would this series not be being made, half of his books probably wouldn't be in English if it weren't for the fucking game. So he has a lot to thank for CD Projekt, and the fact that he's saying, I hope that they can make a proper adaptation, from the source material, blah, blah, blah. Well, CD Projekt decided to, essentially retcon his ending where Geralt dies and then turn it into Amnesia, and then that way they're not affecting his books when they're telling their story throughout the games. But he didn't like that because they, otherwise they would have just been telling prequel stories or, little in-between side stories within his books, and that just wouldn't have worked well, and I think they made the smart decision.
So for clarity too,
so.
From what I understand, the author is involved, at least to some extent, with the show.
CD Projekt Red is involved.
But CD Projekt is not involved with the TV series.
This just shows
right, and that's fine because they're not the fucking stewards of the Witcher series. They're just the guys that adapted it for a video game series.
Also, the other thing is, it just shows how salty he is that. We can't put ourselves in his shoes, but for me, if I made that mistake, I would own up to him and be like, yeah, I screwed up, whatever. But at this point, I would want to create a partnership with CD Projekt. If they took what I created and they did what they did with it, even though I kind of screwed out on money, I would still be like, partner with them or like do stuff with them because they are respecting what I created. And from what a lot of Polish people have said, this dude's been a dick forever. So it's just the way the guy is.
Yeah, people... Yeah, way before CD Projekt Red was a thing, or, adapting his games, he was an asshole, and that's well documented, about him going to cons and being an ass, or what the fuck ever. He's just been that way for a long time, so that's unfortunate, but I do think CD Projekt has done an incredible job of adapting this series, and respected it immensely, and like I said, it wouldn't be shit without them, and I think, even though he's not getting residuals off the game, he's getting all the book sales that happen because of the game, and that's a huge deal. The book covers in America are fucking promo images from the game, so it's like, how do you not get the connection here, dude? How do you not realize that you're, this tide is raising all these ships? So I don't want to focus on that too much. I'm glad you brought it up though, Jared, because that's some pussyfoot shit over there that's going on. But the one thing I wanted to ask real quick, I know we are kind of going long. But real quick, are there any games that you guys really want to get? Let's just say a Netflix series. We're not talking HBO. We're not talking like specifically. You get all of season 1 at one time. It is rated R if it needs to be. It does have the budget and the CG effects that it needs if that's what it requires. What would you guys like?
Do you have any ideas though?
Fallout. I think that's ripe. You could do different seasons in different locations, like one season is DC, or a new place, or whatever. There's just so much there that I would love that, and it would be cool if they did, a lot of CG, or if it was completely animated. I could see some cool stuff with that too, because it's just goofy enough, I think, and I'd love to see that be adapted. It would have to be, like an honest adaptation, like fit the mood where it's serious, but then some weird goofy shit and these funky robots and so on.
For me, there's two things I would really want. Overwatch, the Overwatch cinematics are fantastic.
Fuck, why is that not a thing,
like
Jared?
an Overwatch movie.
Why is there not an animated Overwatch show?
Even just a movie, like a Netflix movie, or even just a movie period, that thing would eat dollars. The other thing, did you guys ever see that Eli Roth Dark Souls short that he made?
No.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it was a promo for DES3.
Yeah, dude, if they made a Dark Souls Netflix series, and obviously it wouldn't be about your character you play as, but the whole story of Dark Souls, all the lore, everything that happens with all of these characters and stuff like that, and they could pick a game, they could pick one of the games, because they're all like multi-universe, the whole lore and theories and crafting, all that stuff, but it can be like kind of like a prequel-esque stuff, or with Gwyn, or any of that stuff. I would love that in that style, specifically of the Eli Roth Dark Souls short. That's what I would want. I didn't want to go too long, but yeah, 100%. It just, I think, really quick before we close up this topic, I think that this is the avenue that's best for video games. Because they are so long, TV treats video games better than a movie does, because you're trying to cram all of this stuff into it. Yeah. And TV and video games kind of go hand in hand of, like, you know, there's these quote-unquote filler episodes. There's filler in video games. There's stuff you do in between the big parts.
But remember, this is an adaptation of the books.
Yeah, that is true. That is true. But you know, in the case of you asking us about video games specifically, yeah.
Yes. I did ask you what game you would want to see.
Really quick before we close out, I want to have one answer and two predictions real quick. Are you gonna? This is not for you, Jordan. Obviously, are you watching this day one, Dom? Okay.
Yeah, all episodes. And probably one Sunday.
From both of you guys, how many episodes do you think season 1's gonna be, and when do you think we're getting it?
12 episodes.
10 episodes.
2019.
2019. Fuck. No, I think it'll be out next year. I mean, Netflix gets these things out
10 and 12,
quick,
we'll see. Mark that in your calendars, boys.
Well, I don't think it's going... I think you're, like, disqualifying yourself saying 12, Dom, because they either do 8, 10, or 13 for Netflix.
Fucking 13, I don't know.
Well, I'm just saying, like the superhero shows are all 13. House of Cards is 13. Orange 12. Is the New Black is 13. No, they're all 13s.
Damn, I thought, because I know Better Call Saul. Never mind, that's not Netflix. I'm gonna stop talking.
Also, Better Call Saul's 10.
Yeah, yeah.
Let's close up the show real quick. We ran a little long, but it's fine. As far as what I'm going to be playing, like I said, I didn't play anything last week, so I have a lot of catch up to do. Going to be reading two of the books that I mentioned earlier that I got. Going to be playing Prey, hopefully. Nothing else that comes out, but there's other games I'm probably going to be diving into. And it's pretty much it. I'm trying to think of what came out in Games with Gold. I think like the Lego Star Wars trilogy, which is a great value. If you haven't downloaded, download it. I've already played through majority of them, so it's not really a big thing for me. But also really quick, which I'm excited about, which you didn't talk about in news because it's not huge news or anything. They announced the final episode of Walking Dead Season 3 is coming out on the 30th, so 2 weeks. Excited for that.
Didn't hear about that.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much it for me. What about you guys?
Wolfenstein, The New Order.
You gotta breathe in. You gotta take a big breath.
Maybe some more breath.
Do you have the DLC for New Order? No. Old Wolf.
Old Blood.
Old Wolf.
I figured I'd just buy the base game. It was like $6, and then if I liked it enough, then I'd buy the DLC. It goes on sale a couple times a year.
That's the smart way to do it, Dom. Which is the opposite of me, where I'm like, I should probably just go ahead and get the complete bundle, even though I have no idea if I like this game or not.
Speaking of that, I'm probably not going to get a chance to play it anytime soon. But I saw a sale for Assassin's Creed Unity for Xbox One for $2, so I bought it. I was like, $2. Yeah. Here, take my money.
What?
Jeez.
That reminds me. Please. I did buy Alan Wake for $3 on Steam.
Oh, good. Yeah, guys. Is that still around? Can people still go get that?
It's too late. You missed it.
God damn, that sucks.
Is it too late to say bye, Wake?
Hit up the used game store and get those physical copies.
Exactly.
They're gonna be. Yep. Well, I don't know what they're gonna be, but they ain't selling them anymore.
Exactly. Great underrated game by a studio we talked about earlier, Remedy. Really cool game.
A masterpiece.
Yeah, underrated studio.
Jordan, what are you gonna be playing? Finishing Life is Strange?
Yes. So yeah, I'm gonna finish up Life is Strange. Be playing some more Prey. So now that I've been through the Giant Sparrow games, I'm gonna go through the That Game Company games. I'm trying to mess around with like just kind of completing some of the smaller indie games I have in my, especially PlayStation library. Just because, especially with PS Plus games with gold. You just get so many of those, and a lot of them are great. But I just need to get around to them.
A lot of them are bite sized too, which is great because you feel like you're accomplishing
Yeah.
something by playing through so many of them, and it's not even as long as a game like Prey. So that's cool.
Yeah, like Edith Finch is like watching a movie. You know, it's like hour 30, hour 45.
Yep.
So, yeah, doing some little bite-sized stuff like that. Had my friend Kofi over before the podcast. We were playing some NBA Playgrounds on the old Switch.
Cool.
Wishing that the nets caught on fire when I dunked like an NBA Jam, but I think I can get over that. And then, yeah, you know I'm going to be watching tons of anime, dude. I'm just all about that right now. Shout out, I want to give a huge shout out to Attack on Titan Season 2. Not enough people talking about that, and it is a really good sequel to a really good
Props
anime.
to the guys who made NBA Playgrounds for not filling the thing with microtransactions. They could have easily done that, and they didn't. So,
Well, props to them on that, but maybe less props because it's kind of a janky-ass game with like a lot of missing features, and
I mean, you're kind of lucky it came to
That's
Switch
quite
in the
upsetting.
first place. I mean, I'm not.
I like I said, I wish it was NBA Jam, but it's $20. You know, I was going back and forth on buying it because it was getting such mediocre reviews, and then I'm like, you know what, fuck, I know I'm going to buy this eventually, so just fucking buy it and start playing it, enjoying it.
Still cool though. It might not be the greatest game, but it's a cool game to play with your friends and stuff.
I'm glad it exists.
Yeah. Anything else on your vast media library that you're going to be tackling next week?
So I'll just give you one more.
Saul.
Like, yeah, there's always so
always a
many things
TV
that
show.
we get off
There's
this
always
podcast.
a Lighthouse.
Yeah, there's always something that I'm like, oh, I just wanted to recommend that so bad because it was so good, and then I forget. But we had our buddy Ian Hink on the podcast a couple weeks ago, and I'm going to be watching the movie Brazil because that is the assignment movie for the second episode of the Easy Allies movie podcast, Reaction Shots, which we talked about when he was here. And so, yeah, Brazil has got De Niro in it. It's a Terry Gilliam film. Terry Gilliam was the voice of the king in The Unfinished Swan.
Ooh, all comes around.
It was weird, yeah. He's like way too famous to be in The Unfinished Swan.
Is that everything?
No, but I'm going to cut it off there because I was just keep talking.
Yeah, thank you guys for listening to episode 60. If you can, please follow us on YouTube by subscribing. We're close to 100 subscribers. Type in Controlled Interest on the search bar and it will come up. Eventually we'll have a nifty little custom URL, and then I can talk about that. Also follow us on Twitter at CTRLINT. Dom does a good job of tweeting out all of our content as well as the latest video game news throughout the week, so that's really good. Follow us individually. I'm at Jared _ Dom is at Dom's Oreos, and Jordan is at Mellow Modus. As well, you can follow us on iTunes if you want to listen to this in audio form. If you can, leave us a review or like the podcast or whatever you can do, rate it. That helps us. We can pop up in those lists of like gaming podcasts or whatever, and we can get more listeners and stuff. That's pretty much it. We'll catch you guys in episode 61, getting closer to E3. We'll see you guys next week. Bye.
I mean, what's the deal with Friends? It's not even a good show!
That was good.